say you've got a bunch of files that you need to append together because you want to import them all at once into a database like CREST. So these are files that are sent to me all together because they apply to the same time period, but some of these are one-point QC checks, some of these are audits, and this is the raw TEOM data that comes from the instruments that these QC checks document. So how do I put all these together and import them? And I want to just basically put them into an Excel file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Excel. Blank workbook. And now I'm going to say data, get data, from file, and then for some reason from folder is in the from file drop down. And then that says, okay, Excel is going to look into a folder. Which folder? So I have a folder that you can make two if you have admin rights to your computer. And in this case, I'm naming the folder White Mountain Apache. And then within White Mountain Apache, data to import. And there are two sites, McNeary and White River. So right now, we're going to import all the actual data files that are in McNeary. So we point Excel to that folder, and now what Excel does is says, okay, let's see what's in that folder. What's in that folder are these different files, just how we saw here, looking at this path. We've got these three text files, and if we open them up in text edit or something equivalent, we could see that these are actually CSV files, but our computers try to interpret them, and it's interpreting it as a .txt. So going back into Excel, I'm going to say, yeah, I don't want all of these because some of these are the results of QC checks. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click Transform Data, because now Excel looks at those files and says, okay, what's going on? Do you want to import these all? They have different numbers of columns, etc. Well, when we are looking at just the data, we know we just want the TXT files. So this Power Query window lets us record steps that we're going to make with every new set of 2 or 3 or 10 CSV files straight off a TEOM that we have to append together into a file that we can import into a database like CREST. So sometimes there might be different numbers of files. So think about this as something that you want to be able to apply to any folder rather than specifying, oh, there are 4 data files in this folder. There might be 5 or there might be 2. So instead of being so specific, what we're going to do is filter by extension.
So here you want to just filter out all files except for the text files. So uncheck XLS because that covers all the QC check and audit check results you have in there too, and only include the TXT file extension. Okay, good. Now, where's all the columns? Well, this is the weightlifter bar. You could see that it's multiple down arrows into one kind of sad face man. So you click that, and that opens up the files to include all the columns that are in each one. And because we've been careful, all of our 3 files contain all the same columns, except of course this is different in each file name, and then the dates and the times are different. So this looks right. So we're going to say, okay, what Excel does is it just looks at one of the files. Right now it calls it the sample file. It's just the first file, and it's assuming they're all going to be pretty similar, and right now we'll find out. So what it does is it expands them all. So now we have a new column that has the file name for every single record, and we've got date and we've got time. And then if we pull over, we could see in column 10, I think. No, here it is. In column 7, the 1 hour mass concentration for PM10 measured with a TEOM. So the first thing that we want to do is we know that there may be a number of files that we're appending together, and that would mean that these header rows are repeated, and we want to filter those out, but we never want to lose information. So what we're going to do first is we're going to use these as the column header. So here, if we go to home, and then use first row as headers. Here, use first row as headers. Now we at least have one of the file's headers here. We can see it's already looks like it's interpreting pretty well. It does have some errors though. Now you may not see these unless you check, if you go to view and then column distribution here. I think this is really useful to look through your data, and it shows you if there's any errors. So we can see now that these errors probably are the column headers that are repeated. So let's filter out anything that's in this column, and therefore in the whole table, that isn't an actual date. So let's click this down arrow, and sometimes the weird things might not show up. So I'm going to say load more, and now if I pull down, no, it doesn't look like it's selecting. It has so many rows that it's not finding. So what I'm going to do is I want to filter this, and I just want to use a text. So one trick is you change the format to text, and then you can do a lot more editing. So first I'm going to change the file type to text. Now you can see that it's labeled text here. Now I can filter. Let's see if the date shows up. Yeah, for some reason there it is. So all we want to do is uncheck this date. Oh, so that's probably why there were errors and it didn't show up here. Okay, so we're going to uncheck date. So what this means is even if we've got 7 or 8 or however many header rows repeated, it's as long as it says date, it's not going to include that whole row. So click OK. And now we can see that we don't have any errors here. Let's change this data type to date time. And wow, no errors there. Here's time. Now one thing is that AQS wants data timestamps on the top of the hour, not for some reason 5 seconds after. So what we can use though is if this is a column where it is set to time, we can do things that extract information. So let's go to transform, and then because this is a time column, this time button gives us options. And if that column was text, this would be grayed out. So change it to time, or however you want to manipulate the values in that column, change it to the best format for that. So what we want to do is extract the start of the hour. Start of the hour. And so it says OK. Now keep in mind that this is really changing the data that before was 5 seconds after. So it's a good thing that you always keep your raw data file in case for some reason that's important. And here we are, 1 hour mass concentration. You could see that it is formatted as a decimal value number. If you have any formatting that you don't think is appropriate, you could change it by clicking here, because each one of these things we do here, the steps are saved And that corresponds to this code here, corresponding to each one of these steps that you can save, and then never have to do this again. Just copy all your CSV files into that folder, and then import the resulting Excel file. So here, keep in mind that if we say change this, which you can do just by changing this here, and we could change this to file names, but what that means is that then next time I'm going to have a bunch of different file names in that folder, and it's going to be looking for this top name that it had, and it's going to say, well, I can't change this header because I need to change it from exactly what it was. So I'm going to click remove this step and just leave this to be whatever it is, and we'll make a list of all the distinct file names in another sheet in our resulting workbook. So this looks good. We've got time here, that's time, and we've got the data that we're going to import here, and it is decimal value. So here we're going to go to home, and we're going to say close and load, and it is going to take us back to where we had our cursor, and here you could see that I had set it to be a connection only. You might say, what's happening? What's happening? Why is my data not showing up? Well, in order to edit the query, taking a break earlier, I saved it to a connection only. So if you ever want to edit it and then not have it produce some giant Excel table, you could just save it to connection only, and then later on when you're ready to actually put it into the Excel table, you click these ellipses and you say load to, and here you can say, oh no, I really want to be a table, and it's going to choose the cell that you have your cursor in. If you choose existing worksheet, that is good for us. We're going to say OK, and here we go. Now you could see I put in the numbers of the columns just to help us. Another thing that I'm going to do right now is this column here is mostly repeated is because we had 3 files, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name a range, and I'm going to show you how convenient that is. So if I click A2 and then Control Shift down arrow to select all the values that are all the way down to the bottom of this table, and then I go to formulas, and then I go to name manager, which is magic, create from selection, and it's going to say, do you have headers? Is that in the top row? And you see I did select A2 that I typed file names into. I'm going to say OK. And now what I can do, now I can create a formula. Oh, I did it already. So I'll start over. So one thing that's weird, this is an array formula. Do you see how it looks weird? And if you click here in the subsequent rows, it's kind of grayed out. That's because this is an array formula. Now, an array formula has to have enough room to the bottom and to the right to expand. If I had something in here like junk, it would give me a spill error because I'm typing in this formula right here. So equals unique, and let me show you how fantastic named ranges are. So I don't remember what column that is that we wanted to pull the unique file names from, but I think it's like file names. And then Excel will auto-complete, and you could tell by the way this one looks different that it's one that we just made. You click Tab to accept it, close parentheses, enter, and it's going to be spill. But once I remove this junk, there it is. So now, no matter how many files I have, I could have 100 files in that folder, and if they're unique in this column here, that is now named file names, it will show up here, which is just a convenient way to look and see, oh, okay, these are the file names that are in this sheet instead of having to filter. So now we take a look at the file. We say, is this good? Uh-oh, I see one thing right here. So what we wanted this to just be date and not have this value of midnight here. So rather than just, going into Excel, Control 1 and changing the format, I want, which could work for importing to Crest also. I don't want to have to add extra steps. I want everything to be over here so that I can just refresh after I pile a bunch of new files into the folder and it will work. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to hover my cursor. The only query over here that really matters is the last one. Once we've get it set up, all we have to do is edit this last one. This is where the transforming happens. So I'm going to click edit, and now I'm back in the Power Query editor window, and I see here, yeah, this is my fault. I changed this to date with the format being like the date at midnight every day. So I'm going to change this from date time just to date. And now good, that looks like date only, no values of midnight. We're ready to go. And now you can see where I say close and load. Once you've closed and loaded to a table, you have to get at it by editing the close and load, changing it to a connection, and then editing it back if you want to change it. But for our purposes, this is fine. Close and load. All we wanted to do was just change this. So it ran through all these steps again, and it said, okay, mistress, this is just date. Now I think we're ready to go and import this into our database, which in our case is Crest. Yay!